But tonight, talk about WordPress security. I've updated it a little bit for 2025. I think 23 was the last time I gave this this in its full. Here's a freebie. I thought I'd put it first. A lot of people leave it to last, so like you've got to stay here until you get the freebie at the end. But you can have that one for free just now. It's a 3-page document. If you haven't ever done a security checklist before, if you've got some clients that have got some problems, it goes through all the basic parts that you kind of should really cover when you're trying to secure a WordPress website. Just check them all off and you'll be at least better than 90% of other WordPress users out there. You got it, Vicky?
I think so.
Cool. It's at the end.
Yeah,
it's at the end anyway. So
Thank you.
all these slides, I'll put them up on the Meetup page. We've got a Facebook page that nobody really uses, but I'll put it up there anyway. And I'll post it into the Slack channel as well. So I've got heaps of links throughout this, and there's reference links at the very end, clickable links. So you'll be able to have that and click on the links and get all that information. I'll post it tonight or tomorrow. I like to meet my pal, Sun Tzu. He was a military strategist and a bit of a philosopher as well. Around about 512 BC, he wrote the famous book, The Art of War. And it's a fantastic read. It goes off about military strategy, how to beat enemies, and then he talks about gardening, flowers, and clouds. And then he goes back to hacking people to bits. It's a really good read. It's free on Audible. I think it's free on Google as well. But if you're trying to get your mindset into where security is, and enemies, and people trying to compromise things, and strategies, and get to know threats, it's a great book. It really does open your eyes into what's happening. So I would really recommend that you give that a read. It's a good read. Again, it's a bit bizarre, but it's a good read. So I pulled out some quotes from The Art of War, and I'm going to translate them into today's talk, just to show you how applicable it is nowadays. So Sun Tzu says, victorious warriors, I won't do the accent, I got real for that last time. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. So what does that mean in today's talk? Don't wait until the site gets hacked first. Be prepared, lock it down, and get ready to defend it. Okay? You don't want to be on the back end of having to repair something. Be up front. So my pal says, to know your enemy, you must become your enemy. Wise words. Yeah, you got to think like a hacker. Think like somebody who's wanting to get your data, what they're looking at, how they're going to get in. So learn how hackers nowadays are compromising sites. What are the big attack vectors? What are they looking for? What things are they using? So be prepared, understand what they're doing, so then you can have the information to at least lock down your website and know where all the security vectors are. So there's a few things you can subscribe to. WordPress is probably one of the leading WordPress security vendors at the moment. So on their WordPress.com website, they have vulnerability databases, they've got blogs, they run a security feed as well that we actually pull directly into our Slack channel. But yeah, it's probably one of the best places to go. Another good place to go is the security blog. Security do a service where if your website's hacked, you pay them $99 US and they clean it for you. So, but they're also quite big into security. Last one, I think, even the finest swords plunged into salt water will eventually rust. So just because your site's secure today, it doesn't mean it can't get hacked tomorrow. Security is not just a one-time thing, it's an ongoing process. So it's like SEO. If you do SEO, you get number 1, Yahoo, and then you leave for 6 months, you're on page 10. Okay, security is exactly the same. There's always going to be threats. You're always at war with unknown enemies. And the worst ones are the ones that got the zero-day exploits, the ones you don't know about. Can't really do very much about that. But if you employ some of the tactics in this, you can be in front of 90% of other people who don't do any of this at all. I did have a graphic about a car from South Africa. And this is in the 80s. They had a flamethrower that come out the side, so it was to avoid carjacking in South Africa. And yeah, that completely got banned, totally. But the whole thing is you make your car as unattractive as possible. The stats for hijacking BMWs, it was a BMW was fitted with the prototype, went down by almost like 90%. So when people are carjacking cars in South Africa, they got it, they go BMW, nah, I'll go with another one. And this is what you're trying to do with security with WordPress. You're trying to make it as unattractive to hack your website as it's easier for them to go onto something else. Because it's no longer a script kiddie's bedroom, trying your username and password. It's now thousands, if not millions, of robots trying your username, your password, any way, any exploit to try and get into there. So if you secure down your website, it's going to try all these exploits. Nah, too waste of time. I'll go into somebody else's admin password. Got it. So just try and make it as secure as you can, not super secure, but as secure as you can so that the bots can move on to someone else. If you are interested in security, this is a great book. I've read it tons of times. This is Kevin Mitnick. He was on the FBI's most wanted list during the late 80s, maybe early 90s, something like that. He hacked into multiple US government agencies, NASA, FBI, CIA, all that sort of good stuff. But the way he did it was through what's it called? Social engineering, that's the one I was looking for. So rather than sit at a computer and work out things, he'd observe a particular target, he'd maybe see what they were wearing, he'd call in advance the secretary, so I'm trying to meet with blah, blah, blah manager. Oh no, sorry, what's their availability? Oh, they can't meet you next month because they're away on holiday. Okay, they'll be away on holiday. And he'd dress up as like workers and learn the lingo, and he'd just walk into this facility, they'd say the lingo that they knew, he looked the part, he spoke the part, he just walked straight into the building, he's got complete access. He didn't hack anything, he went straight to the server room and plugged in his USB or cable. Yeah? And he all did that with social engineering. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is the most vulnerable part of the website is actually you. It's not the system, it's you. So just be aware about the way that you do secure your website. And we'll cover some of these in a minute, but it's a great read, really good read. Okay, so part one is my security fundamentals. This is probably the must-do stuff, the kind of least amount of stuff that you really need to do to cover, to at least secure your website, make it pretty secure. Okay, the first one is called the WP setup attack. And this goes back quite a few years. I see 2017 for the blog, but it's still relevant nowadays. So this is when you set up your website account, you've clicked on the Softaculous, you've installed WordPress there, and then you go make a cup of tea. Okay, and you think, I'll come back to it today, I'm going to do it tomorrow. You get the setup page for WordPress, you've got database, too complicated, I'll go and figure out what to do. Well, this is where this vector comes in. So there's bots always looking for fresh websites. Okay, and they can find them, it's easy enough to find them. And this is a graph from 2017, this is when it first started. And what they do is look for a particular file, a particular method, and then they will install their own website on their own database server, and then start spamming links to it. So if you're going to install WordPress, install it. Don't leave it on the setup page, because you will find that someone will set it up for you, and it won't be yours anymore. They can actually find out through SSL certificates. So when somebody gets an SSL certificate for a new website, there's actually something called certificate transparency. It's an open source. It's used to monitor SSLs within the industry to make sure that they're not being used for bad purposes or misconfigured. But that means when they're registered, it goes into this repository, so you can actually see when people are registering new SSLs. So there was a tech guy, there's a blog. He set up a WordPress website, left it for 30 minutes, and lo and behold, it got installed. So 30 minutes, and that was back in 2017. It only took 30 minutes on a fresh website to get hacked. So be on your guard. What you could do is, if you do need to go and find details or something, if you can't set up your WordPress, then at the very least bind it to your own IP address. So find the IP that you're running your computer on. You can go into this little file called .htaccess, put in this little bit of code with your own IP address, and that means that you can only your computer can at least access that website for that small period. And then go back and delete that. Your IP changes every month or whatever. Okay, so let's move on to username and passwords. This is a big thing. This is probably where most people start with, username and passwords. When you think about a security breach, that's kind of what you think. Someone's got a username and password when you get in. But what I'd like to say about username and password is think of them as a stack of packets, a stack of stuff. It's not just WordPress, username and password. There's also all these other things to think about as well. So you've got your database, requires a username and password to get in. Then if you've got a web hosting account, you've probably got FTP or SFTP, the secure version, the username and password. SSH is your command line secure shell. That's sometimes enabled in WordPress hosts. Again, that's a username and password. But then you've got your actual web account. Yeah, so you've your cPanel, your Pless, your SiteGround. Okay? And then you've got your domain registrar as well. You've got your domain name, maybe your certificates and stuff like that. All these require username and passwords. If you just address WordPress, somebody and you've got like a unsecure FTP or horror forbids a default username and password for an FTP setup, then they can get into your website in any of these ways. So it's not just WordPress, it's the whole stack all the way back. And that includes email as well. You've got a bad email, username and password, because stuff is all set to email, then you can hack that too. So think pancakes. For usernames, you want to try and avoid things that people guess, especially admin. There's still scripts out there. This goes back to the olden days when they had a one-click install in cPanel or Pless. It would install WordPress for you, and it would set the username to be admin. This is where this attack comes from. So if you install a security scanner and you come back the next day, and you can see if any person tried to hack your website, and you see the millions of bot stuff there, it's like admin, 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 admin. It's still a viable, what we call vector security issue. So try and avoid things like admin or root or system or anything that you think somebody else would use for like an admin username, and you'll be doing at least a favor to yourselves. For passwords, I know a lot of people still use this because I know a lot of my clients use this, and this is called character substitution. My sister still uses this, but it's using numbers to replace letters. So visually, it kind of looks similar. You can remember, oh yeah, okay, that's my password. But that takes microseconds to crack. Right. So if you are using that kind of substitute, please stop and use something else. Okay. Other things you shouldn't use for your security, for your password, is what you think of as personal or private information, but that other people, like that Stephen Mickett, can find out through social engineering. So, for example, maybe your first name and your year of birth. That sort of stuff's online. Your favorite footy club and the last time they won or the first time they won a championship. That stuff's easy. You can find that information from people, and these are common. These are common passwords that people will use. Your car registration number. Things that people can find in like 2 seconds, but that people do use nowadays. So think about. I know it's difficult to remember passwords, but try and avoid stuff that's really easy and related that people can find out about you. I've got references to blogs and stuff about all this stuff. So. Some good examples is really long passwords with random numbers and digits and symbols. I use a 24 multi-character password for everything now. So 24 characters, it's got hash symbols, it's got uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols. So that's what I use for pretty much everything. Or, and this might look strange, but using 4 or 5 random words in a sequence that are not related is as secure as having all that stuff, which is weird, and it's easier to remember. So this one here, correct horse battery staple, doesn't mean anything, just 4 words are pulled out, but it's easier to remember than a string of letters and numbers, and again, it's as secure as this, because trying to try all these word variations is crazy. Yeah, a number on the end or a symbol, it's as secure. So there's 2 ways that you can have really secure passwords. Sorry about that. Stargate SG1, the best. I used to have, when I worked in a hotel in Scotland, I used to have the Imperial Death March as the employer's ringtone, so I knew it was them when they were ringing. Okay, anyway. Yeah, so obviously the more complex passwords you get, they're difficult to remember, right? So you shouldn't write them down or store them in a notepad or anything like that. So that kind of moves to using a service like a password manager. Yeah, I used to use LastPass, but they got hacked several times. Yeah. Fortunately for them, their stuff was encrypted. So unless you had the local encryption, then people just had the big password hack, the encrypted store. And it's not been broken so far. But the minute Microsoft releases that quantum chip, then everything that people have stolen that's encrypted is going to be fair game. But anyway, I got sick of all the breaches, so I moved to this one, Bitwarden. It's actually an open source system. You can install it in your own systems if you like and use it open source, or they have a paid service that you subscribe to. So I'm a paid one from this one. But it's got huge encryption, which is really good. You can share passwords, you can share tokens. So if you've got clients, you want them to access stuff, or you have clients and you want them to view stuff, you can tell it to use Bitwarden and share tokens. Tokens mean you're not sending the password. It's a tokenized system, so you never know the password. Bitwarden handles all that for you, so it's a secure way of sharing stuff. Really, really good. I love that. There's a new one. I don't know if it's new actually, but there's another one on the market just now. This is called Keeper, and it basically does roughly the same thing as Bitwarden, but this one has a built-in two-factor authentication. So I'll cover two-factor authentication, but this one doesn't. So if a client shares a username and password to their site, if it uses two-factor authentication, I can't log in because they've got that. Whereas this one has a built-in factor. So if they share all this, then I can log into there and I can see the little code. Okay, so it's still secure, it's still 2FA, but allows me to get in as well. So that could be something you might want to look at. This is used in WordFence. So WordFence has lots of settings. I use the free version of WordFence. I've never paid for the version. Don't tell them that. I'll black that out the recording. But the free one is good enough. But there is a section, there's lots of settings, but there's a section in the settings where it allows you to enforce strong passwords. So that's when people are registering on your website. So if you're allowing registrations, you don't want people to put a weak password, because again, that's a vector point that hackers can use into your system. And it also checks your profile update. So when people are going to reset their password, you don't want to put a simple password after the initial one. So make sure that those two things are definitely checked if you're using WordFence. Because remember, we went to the kind of human side. So if you've got lots of people registering on your website, maybe you've got a membership website, then if they've got a weak username and password, then they are again a vector into your website. This one is one of my favorites. It's called WP Bouncer. I wrote to the guy to say you should use this graphic because I love that graphic. I don't know who the guy is. But this comes from when you're working with clients, especially bigger clients, CEOs, CFOs, you've usually got a PA with them and you do most of the grunt work for them. What I've tended to find is that they share, the CEOs will share their username out to maybe their PA, maybe another person, maybe the line manager or something. So rather than give those people a login, these people just share out their login, which is a bad precedent to do. You never share your username and password with anyone. Like my son doesn't know my password. Don't share it with anyone at all. So this gets rid of login sharing, or at least it circumvents it. So if someone tries to share their password, if somebody else tries to log in and someone is already logged in, then this will either stop them from doing that, saying someone's already logged in with that, and it can send an email notification to the site administrator. So if you're administering that site, you can go back and reprimand that person. Say, don't share your password.
Is that free?
It's free. Yeah. So it's useful in the bigger clients. So you've got lots of kind of chain of commands and people. This one, session safety. So this goes to the WordPress configuration file. WordPress has a wp-config.php file, and it's got lots of setup information in there for WordPress. When you install WordPress, it installs this block of gobbledygook. What that does is, though, when you log into WordPress, it stores your login information. It's what's called a session on your local PC. And all that means is every time you go in the admin dashboard, rather than every time it refreshes to ask you for using the password again, it looks at this little file and says, oh, you've already logged in. Okay, that's fine. I'll let you see that page. This stuff here sets the encryption for what we call those little session cookies. So while it's unlikely that someone can access to your local PC and lift off the session keys, still you don't want to give them information, because this is the information from the default WordPress when you install it. So you should be changing it. At least it gives you that extra little bit of security that nobody knows what it is. Okay. And it's easy. You visit that website, it generates that block for you, and you copy and paste it, and that's it. This is another common thing. If when you hand websites over to clients, they just give everyone admin access. You know, you go back, you wonder why it gets hacked, you log in, there's 40 administrators. You're like, why? So one of the best things you can do to your own website and to somebody else's website is create a admin user and then create another username for them and get an editor. Okay, so the only person that uses admin is the person looking after the website to install plugins and stuff, whereas anyone else is like an editor or an author. It lowers that whole risk of you having to deal with stuff, delete plugins, muck around with settings and things like that. So definitely restrict admin users. Editor users, again, pretty super users. They can still see like plugins and stuff, so even think about that. But in general, if you're an editor, you've got enough security and access to pretty much manage a WordPress website. You don't really need admin unless you do like installations and major changes. Okay, that was that. That's the first part. Whew. So do all that stuff, your website's good to go. But there's extra things you can do. Okay. Linux file permissions. Okay. Now, most websites will be hosted on Linux. So you've got Linux, Mac, Windows, probably some other few, but most web hosts will be on Linux. If your web host is on Windows, or Windows Server, it can run, but there's some issues there. So most of the time you'll come across a Linux file system. So this is when you're maybe using File Manager in cPanel, or you've opened the File Manager plugin, and you have to move stuff around, or you're having problems with uploading things, coming up with errors. Okay, when you have to go into a file and have a look at who's got access to it. So I find a lot of people don't understand this whole thing, and what it ends up doing is you get something like this. You're trying to load something up to media player, and it's coming up with failed write to disk. And you're like, what? So you call the support center, and they say, that's easy. Just change your file permission to 777, special number. And then you go back, get loaded, it works. You're like, yeah, they're brilliant. I'm not actually. Go and find another host, because that's just an easy fix. And I'm going to show you what they're doing here. Okay, so here's a quick, I can see the horror on some people's faces. This is a quick introduction to base numbering and binary. Okay, I thought it'd be fun. I find it fun. The door's there if you want to run now. Okay, all right. So here's a quick recap on our numbering system, the decimal system, and how we actually get digits. Okay, so our decimal system got 10 fingers, 10 toes, hopefully, and so we run what's called base 10. Okay, so you know about your singles, your tens, your hundreds, your thousands. Yeah, so this is what base is. Okay, so 10 to 0. Anything to 0 is always 1. So always start with 1. And then your second column is your tens, and then your hundreds, so we're kind of moving that way. But when you're reading base numbers, unlike how you learn numbering or math at school, you actually read base numbers from right to left. Okay? And it'll make sense once you see. Okay, so here's a decimal, our system, number 129. Doesn't stand for anything, it's just random. Okay? So what we actually do is, when we work out mathematically, we start at the right, and everything goes tens of powers all up a bit. So at the right, it's 10 to 0, which is always a 1. And we've got a 9 in that column, so it's 1 times 9 is 9. The next column is like your tens. I'll take you back to kindergarten. Huh? So the next one is 10 to the power 1, and we've got number 2 there, so that's 10 times 2. Right? And the same for 10 to 2, which is your hundreds column. We've got 1 there, so 100 times 1. And then add them all together, 100 and 20 and 29 and 129. So that's mathematically how our system works. And once you understand that way, you can understand any base number, including binary. The binary is base 2. So we just replace the number 10 with a number 2. And it's exactly the same. We work from right all the way to left. I promise you I'm going somewhere with this. Okay, so here's an example. Binary, base 2, 1, 0, 1. Okay, there's actually decimal number 5. And here's how it's number 5. Again, we start from the right. So we've got a 1 there, 2 to the power 0, it's always a 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. 2 to the 1, I've got a 0 there, so that's 0. And then 2 to 2, which is 2 squared, which is 4. I've got a 1 there, so 4 times 1 is 4. And we add them all together. 4 and 0 and 1 is 5. Okay, easy, easy peasy. Once you know how, binary is easy. Okay, here's a quick check. Okay, these are all binaries on or off. 0 is off, 1 is on. And that's how all these non-quantum computers work. So here's an example. This is how it works. So right to right. So we're going up in base 2, so times 2. So we've got 1, and then it doubles each time. 2, 4, 6, 15, 32, 64, 128, 26, blah, blah, blah. So all that, if that was a binary number, that would equal to 2047. Here's another example. We've got some switched off this time, so we don't count those. So we just count the ones that are switched on. So again, start from the right. We've got 1, 2, we've got 8, 16, 32. We've got 1, 2, 8, 2, 6, and that equals that number there. So again, easy. We're just adding them up. You're cool. What's that?
5.
What's that?
Yeah.
What's this one? I can see the thumbs coming out.
64. 16.
16, like that.
Yeah.
And quickly, what's this one?
33.
Well done. Most people say 17 because they see that extra one. They go, oh, 16 plus 1. No. So you're binary wizards now. So now you understand file permissions. Okay, let's move on to file permissions. This is complex, but this is horrible. So in Linux, you have 3 groups of users that can access a file. Okay, you have U, which is like the user, or the web server, the user, like the owner, what we call. You have G, which is a group. That means you can assign access to other people, like technicians or tech support, that sort of stuff. And then O is the only one I care about. That's everyone else. That's other people coming into your website's file system. Okay. So within those 3 columns, access to files are given by 3 attributes. R is read, W is write, and X is execute or run, basically. This is maybe no. Let's just. I'll do it in the next one. So in binary, if something's switched on, so it's a 1. If it's switched off, it's a 0. So in this we've got 1 and 1, so I switched all those attributes on. That means that we're going back to our decimal. We add them all up. So 1 plus 2 plus 4. We add them all up, and the result is 7, and that's why we get 7 up there. That's what makes that number 7. Okay. I know that a lot of people say, "Oh, this permission is for folders, and this permission is for files." People don't understand why, but this is why. So this is WP folder permissions. Everyone says you got a folder, give it 755, and this is why. Okay. So we want to give the owner, the web server, us, the access to read, write, and execute. You actually need to execute. I know it sounds a bit weird, you don't want to run a directory, but in order to get into a directory, it needs to have an execute attribute. Otherwise, you try and open the folder, it says access denied. Okay, so this folder is a bit special. So we need that 1 in the X, and then we want people to be able to add stuff and remove stuff from that directory. So and read stuff from that directory. So we want all those switched on for us and the web server. So again, that totals up to 7. But for the group, and especially the public, we don't want to give them 7, okay? We want to give them a limited access. So again, folder special need an execute for people to open it, so you can see the files. We don't want to give write access. God, no. And we do want to give read access. Okay, so we want people to go into the folders and read the files in there. Otherwise, our WordPress website's not going to work. So again, 101, going this way, which is 1 plus 0 plus 4, which is 5, and that's fine. These permissions are 755. So we want to give us full control and everyone else just the ability to read and open those folders. File permissions, running on the same thing. We want read and write access for ourselves, the web server. We don't particularly want execute, we don't want to run our stuff. We don't want to run PHP files, we want to edit them, update them and save them, but we don't want to run them with scripts. We let that the web server do that. So we drop the execute. So we just have read and write, which is 4 plus 2, which is 6. And similarly, for the public, we want to give them just read access. We definitely don't want them running scripts, that'd be bad, and we don't want them to edit files as well. So we just want to read the files, okay? So that's why directories are 755 and file permissions are 644. There you go, intro to this is why it's bad. So look what we're giving the other people. So when bringing it all back together, when your web host says, oh, just change it to 777, okay? This is why it's bad. You're giving the public read, write, and execute access to everything in that folder, which is crazy stupid. Okay.
But why didn't they get the error in the first place?
Probably because their folder was set to something that they couldn't add. So maybe the folder was set to 744 or 740, where people didn't have access to this.
Is it not easier for them to say 755 instead of 777?
Yes, that's what they should have said. Yeah. See, sometimes I don't want to go into specifics. Sometimes when you're running a WordPress website, the web server, the hosting company can put in like a special container system where it kind of uses the group setting. So if that number is not quite right, sometimes you get that file. Can't upload it, can't write to it. Yeah, so that's bad. Right, here's some rough access files. So you've got HT access, which is quite important. It has rewrite rules and system and stuff. Public needs access to it in order to do redirects and stuff, so we need to give them at least read access. But again, just read access complete. We don't want any updates for that unless we're editing it. Your PHP ini, again, that's a configuration file for PHP. We don't want hackers to see what we're running, so we give public 0, but we still need to read it for ourselves in the web server. And I say us, I mean the web server as well. Same with wp-config.php. If we want to lock that down, we're not even able to update it. If you're locking these down, sometimes you'll find that when you're uploading plugins, like Cache plugin or something, it has to update these files, and that'll come up with a warning that says, oh, I can't update the file. In that instance, you go back and up it to 644, let it do its update, and then lock it back down. Okay, yeah. Right, so that was the second part, which is you're now all binary and Linux wizards, which is great. This part is like the creme de la creme. So if you want to auto-secure WordPress, these are the extra steps that you can go into. One is, of course, regularly update WordPress core, plugins and themes. Most hosting sites will have a staging site or development site, cloning site. Whereas if you run a complex website, you just copy over, then you go and update WordPress, you update the themes. Was it broken? Yes, no. You can either migrate that staging one back to live, or you've got the confidence now that you know that if you go into your production server and update it, it's not going to crash. So I'd always recommend you do that first. I use a tool called Manage.wp. There's other ones out there. There's ones you can self-host as well. I think it's called Main.wp. But I use this one. I pay for the service. It's good. It allows me to manage all my client websites. For most of the simple websites, I will just update. But I have something called regression analysis. So what it does is it takes a snapshot of the backup as in a visual snapshot. It'll then update it. It'll then compare the visual image before and after. If it sees something that's a bit off, it'll rewind and restore back. So I've got that switched on for most clients. And then I've got some bigger clients that I have everything switched off. And I just do a clone and update that. Okay, right, that's fine. But I can manage all that through Manage.wp. I've got about 100 odd sites on that. There's another one if you want to go down the Aussie route. My friend Jez in Melbourne, he's got Koala Boss. It does exactly the same, but it's Australian made. So I've been testing that out, helping him test that out for there. So definitely have a look at Koala Boss and support Jez on that one. WordPress. WordPress has version numbers. Okay, it's roughly split into this. Usually when you're talking about software, usually split into 3 different numbers. But WordPress being WordPress, splits it just into 2. So you've got what they call a major update, which is the first 2 numbers, and then you've got called a minor update, which is the last number. It really shouldn't be called a minor update because it includes things like bug fixes and security patches, which is not minor. But for terms' sake, that's what they call them. So in general, big enhancements get increased to 6.3, 6.4. WordPress just keeps going up. So when it gets 6.9, the next one will go to 7. It doesn't mean 7 is a huge, big, fancy beast. It just means that's the next version. So WordPress don't do fancy releases like that. And that includes like your major stuff, like major updates tinkering in the background, and things we call things that no longer work. We call deprecated. It's a big fancy term, but it means it's taking stuff out. deployments. So those are the big things. So if you see a big update from 6.2, 6.7, 6.8, you should think about testing that rather than just upgrading, because it's going to be significant. The minor updates, yeah, you should apply them because it's bug fixes. But again, be wary. Do it at a staging server. Yeah, so of course update regularly. WordPress itself, if you don't tinker around with the settings, it updates for minor versions, so it will apply security patches automatically. You could have more control over the way that WordPress updates itself by adding this into your config file. So it's a variable, and you can set it to true, which means it just updates everything. So the second a little thing's released, it updates it. A big one, it updates it. If you're paranoid, you can set it to false. That means it's all disabled, so it doesn't auto-update itself. So I just run big clients, that's set it into no. And then minor, but that's a default anyway. So you can set it to true or false to update everything. If you've got like a small blogging website, you can do that. Or false if you've got a big client that you don't want falling over. Plugins. This was introduced quite a while ago. You can automatically update plugins on a plugin basis. So in the settings in your dashboard, go to plugins, you can enable or disable auto updates for that specific plugin. So I sometimes use this. I sometimes disable WooCommerce. If I've got like a website that's up and running, I'll disable WooCommerce from auto updates, because more often than not, when it updates, it makes the website fall over. Or if you've got like 1,000 plugins, you just want to disable that, because any update is going to crash your website. But it is, so a bit of control over there. Themes do that as well, just in a different place. So when you open up the theme information, you can see enable updates there. But you have to actually go into the theme to do it. It's a bit inconsistent, but here you go. Again, you've got control over how this works. So not in the config file, but in your functions or code snippet, you can have these two lines. If you really want all your plugins to update all the time, you can set that to true, and the same for your themes. I wouldn't recommend that, to be honest, unless you've got like 1 or 2 plugins. Because if you're allowing everything to update all the time, then more often than not, it's going to cause a conflict. But you can. This is a big one, actually. Being caught a lot of clients, a lot of people doing this. So this is a scenario where you're trying to build a big website, if it's a WooCommerce or a membership site. You're already down to your 10th plugin. It's $150 US each per year, and you're adding up totally. You go, oh, it's beautiful that, and then you go googling, right? And you find this website has it for free. Don't go there. Okay, there's a great blog post there from WPM Dev, and this is a few years ago. But what they did is they took 4 or 5 of the top plugins and Googled it, and no joke, 9 out of 10 of the links that they went to get the free version of that with like WordPress free, WooCommerce free, or something like that. 9 out of 10 of the links, when they downloaded the zip file for the theme or plugin, it had malicious code. So if someone's offering a free, it's called nulled, which means take out the license thing, more often than not, the reason they're doing that is so they can put their malicious code in there. So it's a big red flag, just pay the money. How to do it, I'll go through this really quickly. The majority of people who add malicious code into themes and plugins, they use something called eval Base64. Base64 is a PHP function. It takes something and it makes it look gobbledygook. And eval is a PHP version for run something. So here's an example. So you might be looking through your theme files and you'll see something like this. It's all gobbledygook and you don't know what it is. Okay, but it doesn't look suspicious, except if you look at the very top, it says eval and then Base64 decode. And what that script is doing, it's already encoded it, and that's why it's gobbledygook. But when you decode it, you get a script. It comes back. And look, it's got soin.ru, which is a very good thing. Okay. And then you're telling it to run. Eval is PHP run. So even if you're looking through stuff, it might not look weird, as in you can't see any dodgy stuff in there, but you've got those 2 eval Base64, which is, they are used legally, they are useful, but in malicious malware, they're often used to encode stuff and hide stuff. So if you really want to, you can have a look. I found it in files, I found it backwards as well, so Base64 decoded, you have a good eye for that. Or you can use a plugin called ThemeCheck. So if you have downloaded a particular free theme that was paid or a plugin or something, then you can run the Steam check. I think it also works for plugins. It just looks through for known malicious stuff. But WordFence will do that as well. It looks through stuff for malware. Okay, we're getting towards the end. Plugins. If you're not using a plugin, don't leave it disabled, because that's still leaving all the files there. So if someone else gets in and they see you've got like an old version of WooCommerce or something, then they can always run the vulnerability within that plugin, even if it's not active. So if you're not using a plugin, remove it. You can always upload it again. But where to go to have a look to see if a plugin is okay to use in the first place. This is WordPress.org, and you're looking for the last updated. So that makes sure that the plugin is being updated regularly. If that says over 2 years, then it's likely not being supported and too old. Active installations gives you a good idea of how popular it is. Popularity doesn't mean it's okay, because it could be a popular way for people to hack in. There's been some big plugins that got hacked recently. And also this appears and disappears quite often from the plugin page. I don't know why. There's debates inside Automatic as to why you should show that or not show it. Again, jump onto support tab on there, and it usually tells you, you usually see if it's being actively developed. If people are replying to support requests, that's a good indication that the developers are keeping it maintained. If you see nothing's been replied for 2 or 3 years, probably somebody's jumped ship and probably not a good idea to use that anymore. So that's a couple of ways you can kind of have a look at a new plugin on WordPress.org, at least, to see if it should be safe using it. This doesn't really apply anymore. I think everyone's got SSL. Anyone not got SSL? You can tell me afterwards if you're scared to that. But security. Yes, security certs, they're free now. So no one should be ever paying for security SSLs anymore, because this company. But when you are using SSL certificate, always make sure that people are logging in using HTTPS. So there's a couple of things you put in the config file that just forces somebody, if they do have to come through plain text to some old link or something, just make sure they're logging in using the secure by doing that. So the first one, second one, make sure the login page is secure, and then the admin one, make sure when they log the dashboard is under HTTPS. Mentioned WordFence a few times. Security firewall. It's a software firewall. Your web host should have big racks of machines that's actively looking for malware, but I like to have this little software control within my client's control, we can monitor stuff and have that extra level of security. I use WordFence. As I say, I'm not affiliated with them, but I use WordFence. There are other ones though. There's Security, there's iTheme Security, there's Better Security for those. I've tried them all. I like WordFence, but it's my personal choice. One of the big malwares that's still out there just now is cryptocurrency miners. I actually had a client a few weeks ago came to me and said, I think there's something wrong with my website. I had complaints from clients. What happened was, when somebody goes on a particular page on the website, the client, their laptop or their main unit would spin up, the fan would go crazy. That's because it was a cryptocurrency malware code. So when somebody visits a certain web page, there runs some JavaScript, it's actually mining for Bitcoins or some sort of coin. So it's using all the client, not the clients, the customers' CPU to mine for coins. So that's still out there. It was relatively easy to remove, but yeah. So if your fan ever spins up, you go, someone's mining, someone's using my energy to mine.
What do you do? Turn it off? How do you shut everything down and begin again, or?
I had to hunt through the theme. I found the theme had been corrupted. They had half a dozen old plugins that had security issues that someone had gotten in and infected the file. Put this in there. Actually, they targeted one of the landing pages, the most popular landing page that was coming in from Facebook ads, and then people were hitting that ad, hitting this landing page, and and it wouldn't stop. They were freaking out. Yeah. Another good one is brute force login attempts. We talked about botnets, so millions of computers targeting. People don't sit and hack anymore; they just get AI to do it for them. If you don't use WordFence, you don't want to use WordFence, which has this force login attempt, then at the very least, you probably use something like limit login attempts. So what it does is it looks at all the incoming stuff. If it sees that somebody's trying to log in or register like multiple times, it stores the IP and it just either rate limits it or just stops them for half an hour or something.
Would you use both?
No, just use one or the other. Yeah. Some people don't like to use WordFence for whatever reasons, but I would say if you don't use it, a security thing, definitely do this. Because it's bad people trying to register and test your website to log in, but it's even worse because it's actually using all the resources from the server all the time. So your own customers or your own website is flagging because people are trying to log in all the time. This one always annoys me. I don't know why they haven't removed it. If from a default WordPress installation, if you get the right username but a wrong password, it tells you. It says the password you entered with the admin is incorrect. What? I don't know. It really annoys me. So and there's it's a one-line fix. You add this to your functions, your code snippet, and that little message disappears. There's no little code snippet where you can actually change the text on if you still want something. I usually change it to like, security credentials enter incorrectly, and it shakes the screen. But telling people you've got a right username, that's bonkers, man. I don't understand that. Okay, almost there. Backups. Of course,
about the previous one.
Yeah.
The one question I wanted to ask.
Yep.
And it's the biggest thing that helped me is just to change the URL of the login.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering when you're going to talk about that, but I'm not seeing it yet.
No, I've not got that one in there.
It causes problems?
No.
Or it prevents people from knowing where to log in?
There's a proper way of doing it, okay, and there's a hacky way of doing it. The hacky way of doing it is to redirect from the PHP file into like a /login or /banana or something like that. The proper way to do it is to rename the whole admin, WP admin. Okay, but that causes problems because when you move a folder, then some plugins assume a direct. Will hard code that in. So when you go moving things around your WordPress setup, which is probably a good thing to do, you get people who hard code stuff in. So yeah, I tend to avoid doing that because there's so many ways people can get into WordPress anyway. Like WP config, WP-admin, there's login, so moving it, if you're not doing it properly, it's going to break the website. So that's why I haven't included that.
2 out of 3 breaks it.
Yeah. One dodgy developer and that's it. But yeah, great. Thank you for mentioning that. Backups. So you should always have backups. There's no excuse not to have backups. You can back up to Dropbox. You can back up to Amazon. You can back up to Google. You can back up to email. You can back up to server. Don't do that, but you can. But you should always have backups. But the thing about backups is don't just do it once and leave it. Don't assume it's working. You should look at what's called retention. So how often are you backing up? How often are the backups there for? So if you get hacked, or your clients get hacked, when you're working your way back to see when you got in, what happens if it wasn't a week ago? What happens if it was 5 months ago? Have you got 6 months worth of backups to get clean? So have a look at your retention. How much are you holding? How much do you need to hold? But test as well. Don't just assume that you could be able to go there, download the zip file, and it'll work. Because I've had a few clients, people come to me, they've went to the backup system, they've downloaded the zip file, and it's like corrupt. Can't open it. Or there's things missing that they expected. They're like no database. It's just a fact. So always go test. Take one that's 4 months old, a few months old, download the zip file, unzip it in your local, make sure it's got all your WP-content, your uploads, and it's got an SQL file, and then you'll be good to go. So don't just assume it's working all the time. Two-factor authentication is good, and you should use it. I tell everyone to use it all the time. So that's when you have a little code on your phone, or a key, so it's usually on your phone, and it's got this rotating number every 30 seconds. And the whole idea is that people can find out your username and password through social engineering or hacking, but they can't get that code. It's something you have with you. So I tell all my clients to use two-factor authentication. there really isn't any excuse. I've never had a client come back to me and say how they can't use it. There's excuses for not using it because it's yet another thing to carry around. But no one's ever given me a good reason why they shouldn't use it because it's enhancing security. Yeah.
And is it similar to Cloudflare? What do you think?
Cloudflare? Cloudflare is more of a caching system. They might have this, but this is to use two-factor authentication. You usually install a plugin, but this one's using WordPress, and they've got a two-factor on what they call multi-factor authentication. I haven't looked at Cloudflare. They might offer that service now. I don't know how they would without adding some code to the website. But Cloudflare generally is just a caching network. It's called it's a CDN. It stores copies of bits of your website. It's all around for faster access. If you are running your own VPS, virtual private server, so you're not using the web host, because these web hosts will do all this stuff for you, I hope. But these are some things to make sure your database is secure. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you very much.
So if you are running your own instance, you need to make sure that all your, not just WordPress is updated, all the files on the web server is, but specifically for your database, you want to make sure that MySQL or MariaDB is secure as well. So I'm not going to go through all that because most people are probably not running VPS. So if you fell asleep at any point, now's the time to wake up. Here's a summary of what to do. So we covered complex usernames and passwords. We had a look at file permissions. Did we use code snippets, themes, and plugins? Oh no, uninstall. So yeah, we uninstall stuff that we don't use. We make sure everything's updated regularly. Never ever use null free themes or plugins. That's bad, red flag. Use a security firewall. Go through all the settings, make sure it's actually securing your website and not just install it and leave it. I say consider using two-factor authentication. That's me being nice. Use two-factor authentication. It's going to secure your website. Extra one here, lock all doors, windows, and switch off internet. If you're really paranoid, that will work. If you switch off the server, no one gets your website, you can't hack it. Thumbs up. And yeah, we all learned binary because base numbers are cool. Here's some additional stuff. Again, these slides will be up on Meetup, so you can click on all those links. It's just links to other security tips and reports and malware and stuff that just helps you to educate what's happening in 2025 in the security space. Again, the security checklist, I think everyone got that the first time. Vicky's still trying to get it. You get it this time?
Wait. Yes, it's taking a while as well.
You got it.
Thank you.
That's it. That's my 2025 update. It was a very long one. Thank you for not falling asleep.